The Ceres Federation stretched across dozens of star systems, their reputation preceding them like a shockwave through the void. Known for their ruthless military expansionism and an elite force called the Veteran Killers, they had subjugated countless civilizations with calculated efficiency. Their warships commanded fear across every sector they entered, their very presence enough to make potential resistance crumble into immediate surrender. On the command bridge of the Iron Will, Captain Cargo Vess stood with hands clasped behind his back, his scaled skin reflecting the dim blue light of tactical displays. His eyes, vertical slits of amber within a face marked by battle scars, surveyed the approaching star system with predatory anticipation. Target system coming into range, Captain, reported as navigation officer. Tarsus sector, as ordered. Vess nodded, feeling the familiar thrill of conquest stirring in his chest. His career had been built on 14 successful planetary acquisitions, diplomatic term for what was essentially military occupation. The Veteran Killers under his command had crushed all resistance with such efficiency that most planetary governments now chose immediate capitulation rather than risk Ceres' wrath. Maintain approach vector. Prepare long-range sensors for full spectrum analysis, Vess ordered, his voice carrying the gravelly tone characteristic of his species. I want complete tactical readiness before we exit hyperspace. The year 4827 by interstellar calendar standards marked 3 centuries of Ceres expansion. While the Interstellar Council existed as a governing body for most civilized species, their power remained largely ceremonial when faced with Ceres military might. The Council issued proclamations, established trade regulations, and mediated minor disputes. But when Ceres battleships appeared over a world, the Council's protests were mere whispers lost to vacuum. Vess moved to his command chair, settling his 7-foot frame into the padded seat designed specifically for his physiology. The bridge crew worked with practiced precision around him, the atmosphere tense but controlled. These were the elite of Ceres military, carefully selected, thoroughly indoctrinated, and extensively trained. Captain, his intelligence officer approached, data tablet in hand. Latest intelligence update from High Command. You might find this interesting. Vess took the tablet, scanning the information with growing skepticism. Deathworlders. He practically spat the word. Is High Command now trafficking in ghost stories and children's tales? The intelligence comes from multiple verified sources, sir. Apparently, a species from a class 13 gravity world has recently joined the Council. They call themselves humans. The intelligence officer, Lieutenant Maldar, seemed unusually concerned. Some reports suggest they were involved in the unexplained retreat of our forward elements in the Persei sector last month. Vess dismissed the notion with a wave of his clawed hand. Propaganda, clearly. The Council invents threats to discourage our rightful expansion. He handed back the tablet. Our retreat from Persei was tactical. Those mining colonies weren't worth the resource expenditure. But privately, something about the report disturbed him. The Persei operation had been classified. Few outside High Command should have known about the unexpected complications that forced withdrawal. Ceres commanders had reported unusual interference with ship systems, targeted with precision that suggested intimate knowledge of Ceres technology. Most disturbing was the complete communications blackout that preceded the withdrawal. Sir, his communications officer interrupted his thoughts. Incoming transmission from Supreme Command. The main view screen shifted to show Admiral Vargos, his weathered face a roadmap of campaigns spanning decades. Captain Vess, your mission parameters have been updated. Vess straightened. I'm listening, Admiral. Recent developments require investigation. The border world Tarsus foreshows signs of Council interference. Our advanced scout ships reported unusual defensive patterns before losing contact. Intelligence suggests possible Deathworlder involvement. The Admiral's expression hardened. Your primary objective. Confirm if these humans have established a presence in our sphere of influence. And if confirmed, eliminate that presence. The Ceres Federation will not be intimidated by Council phantoms. Understood, Admiral. If these Deathworlders exist, They will learn why we're called veteran killers. The transmission ended, leaving Vess contemplative. Despite his dismissive tone, something about this mission felt different. Still, nothing in his experience suggested any species could truly challenge Ceres' military superiority. Whatever these humans might be, if they even existed, they would soon learn their place in the galactic order. Set course for Tarsus 4, he commanded, and prepare all combat teams for potential engagement. As the Iron will accelerated toward its destination, none aboard could have predicted how profoundly this encounter would change their understanding of their place in the cosmos. The hyperdrive disengaged with the characteristic shudder that rippled through the Iron Will's hull. Stars reappeared in the viewport as the massive battlecruiser reverted to normal space at the edge of the Tarsus system. Captain Vess leaned forward in his command chair, predatory instincts heightened. Full sensor sweep, he ordered. I want everything cataloged, from capital ships to maintenance drones. The bridge hummed with activity. Officers called out readings as information poured in from the advanced sensor arrays that had mapped dozens of star systems for Ceres conquest. System appears minimally defended, Captain, reported the tactical officer. Orbital installations around Tarsus 4 consistent with standard Council defensive protocols. Nothing that would challenge our capabilities. Vess nodded, unsurprised. The Council rarely invested heavily in military infrastructure, preferring diplomatic solutions over martial ones, a weakness the Ceres had exploited repeatedly. Life aboard the Iron will followed strict military discipline. Even now, throughout the vessel, combat drills continued uninterrupted. The ship carried over 8,000 Ceres troops, each trained in the ruthlessly efficient tactics that had made their empire feared across known space. Their powered armor and plasma weapons represented the pinnacle of Ceres military engineering. Deploy scout vessels, Vess commanded. Standard reconnaissance pattern. As the smaller ships detached from the main vessel, Vess turned to Lieutenant Maldar. Any unusual communications traffic? Nothing significant on standard channels, but Maldar paused, adjusting his console. Captain, we're detecting an encoded transmission on a frequency we've never encountered before. Origin appears to be within the Tarsus system, but precise location indeterminate. Can you decode it? Attempting now, sir, but the encryption is unusual, not matching any known cipher patterns in our database. Vess's interest sharpened. The Ceres Intelligence Division prided itself on maintaining comprehensive records of all known species communication protocols. An unknown encryption pattern suggested either a newly spacefaring race or deliberately developed countermeasures against Ceres intelligence gathering. Keep working on it. I want to know what's being said and who's saying it. Hours passed, as the Iron will maintain position at the system's edge. The scout vessels proceeded deeper into the system, transmitting regular status updates as they approached Tarsus 4. Captain, the sensor officer's voice carried unmistakable alarm. Scout vessel Talon 3 has ceased transmission. Vess's head snapped toward the tactical display. Last known position, approaching Tarsus IV's second moon. Their final transmission showed all systems nominal. Deploy combat team to investigate. Prepare second scout group as backup. Before the orders could be implemented, another alert sounded. Scout vessels Talon 1 and 4 also offline, sir. No distress signals, no debris detected. They simply disappeared from sensors. For the first time, Vess felt a flicker of unease. 3 scout vessels, each carrying Ceres's most advanced stealth and defensive systems, had vanished without firing a single shot or sending a distress call. All remaining scouts, return to the Iron will immediately, he commanded. Raise shields and bring weapons to full readiness. As the bridge crew rushed to comply, Lieutenant Maldar approached again. Captain, I've identified something about that encrypted transmission. While we can't decode the content, the transmission pattern shares characteristics with data packets documented in theoretical xenobiology reports on human communication protocols. Vess's amber eyes narrowed. So they do exist. Sir, the sensor officer interrupted. unknown vessel detected approaching from Tarsus 4. The main view screen shifted to show a sleek craft unlike any in Ceres records. Perhaps a quarter the size of the Iron Will, it bore none of the aggressive design elements characteristic of Ceres warships. Instead, its smooth contours suggested an emphasis on speed and maneuverability rather than raw firepower. Identification markings? Vess demanded. It bears the insignia of the Interstellar Council, sir. And another symbol our database identifies as potentially human in origin. Biological scans? The officer looked confused. Readings suggest approximately 50 life forms aboard, but he hesitated. Their biological signatures read as Class C threat level at most. Minimal armor, no significant biological weapons or augmentations. Detected. Class C was the designation Ceres intelligence used for non-combative species, those whose physiology presented virtually no threat in direct confrontation. Vess had expected Deathworlders to register at least as Class A, if not beyond conventional threat matrices entirely. They're masking their signatures somehow, Vess decided. No species survives on a death world without significant biological advantages. The communications officer turned suddenly. Captain, we're being hailed. Standard Council diplomatic frequency. Vess straightened his posture. On screen, the view screen flickered, revealing a figure that immediately struck Vess as paradoxically unremarkable, yet deeply wrong. The being appeared bipedal, with exposed facial features lacking any natural armor. No visible claws, spines, or defensive structures. Its skin seemed alarmingly vulnerable, its limbs lacking the powerful musculature that even the least martial Ceres possessed. This is Emissary Talia Reeves of the Interstellar Council vessel Stalwart Dawn. The being spoke, its voice disconcertingly measured. Captain Vess, you have entered a system under Council protection. We respectfully request your immediate withdrawal. Vess studied the creature with open disdain. I recognize no Council authority in Ceres expansion territory. Identify your species, emissary. I am human, Captain. From Earth. She paused, then added with unsettling directness. A fact I believe your intelligence has already informed you of. 3 of my scout vessels have gone missing, Vess countered. Would you know anything about that, human? Your vessels approached restricted space despite clear warnings transmitted on all frequencies. Appropriate defensive measures were taken. There is no hint of apology or concern in her tone. No casualties resulted from these actions. Your personnel have been detained and will be returned upon your departure from the system. Vess felt anger rising in his chest. The audacity of this soft creature to speak of detaining Ceres warriors as if it were a trivial matter. The Ceres Federation does not recognize Council restrictions, he snarled. Your presence here is irrelevant. Depart immediately or face the consequences of interfering with Ceres military operations. The human showed no reaction to his threat. No fear, no anger. Not even the diplomatic hesitation Vess had come to expect from Council representatives. I'll be direct, Captain Vess. Humanity has no interest in conflict with the Ceres Federation. However, we will defend Council worlds that have requested our protection. Her eyes, oddly expressive compared to Ceres' ocular structures, seemed to harden slightly. Your reputation precedes you, but I strongly advise against testing our resolve. Vess barked a laugh that displayed rows of serrated teeth. Your soft flesh doesn't impress me, human. The Ceres have conquered species far more formidable than yours. Perhaps, she acknowledged with an unsettling smile. But I doubt you've encountered anything quite like us before. With that, the communication ended. Vess turned to his weapons officer. Target their vessel. Fire warning shots. Plasma bursts. 10% yield. Show these humans what real power looks like. The weapons officer complied, and brilliant streaks of energy lanced toward the Stalwart Dawn. But before they could impact, the smaller vessel seemed to shimmer and vanish from its position, reappearing seconds later several thousand kilometers away. Impossible, breathed the tactical officer. No registered drive technology could execute that maneuver without pre-planning. An unsettling silence fell over the bridge as the implications sank in. Whatever these humans were, whatever technology they possessed, it clearly exceeded Ceres intelligence estimates. Vess felt the first genuine stirring of concern. Perhaps there was more to these Deathworlders than council propaganda after all. Maintain battle readiness, he ordered, his voice betraying none of his unease. And give me everything we have on human biology and technology. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. The atmosphere aboard the Ironwell had shifted. Where confidence had reigned moments before, uncertainty now crept along the edges of Ceres' certainty. For the first time in his distinguished career, Captain Cargo Vess wondered if he might have underestimated an opponent. Captain, all long-range sensors are active, but we can't locate the stalwart Dawn, reported the sensor officer, frustration evident in his voice. They're either using technology that circumvents our detection methods, or they've left the system entirely. Vess paced the bridge, tension radiating from his powerful frame. They haven't left. Deploy our full sensor drone network. I want every cubic kilometer of this system monitored. Sir, Lieutenant Maldar approached, data tablet in hand. I've compiled the requested information on humans. It's concerning. Vess took the tablet, scanning through the sparse data with increasing disquiet. The report classified Earth as a Class 13 planet, a designation reserved for worlds so hazardous that evolutionary development of sentient life was considered nearly impossible. Extreme gravity, atmospheric toxins, aggressive predators, natural disasters, radiation levels, temperature extremes. Earth apparently combined nearly every environmental challenge documented by xenobiologists. This can't be accurate, Vess muttered. No species could evolve under these conditions. Intelligence believes that's precisely why humans are dangerous, Maldar replied. Their evolutionary path required adaptations unlike any documented in other council species. Before Vess could respond, an urgent alert sounded. Captain, patrol ships Delta and Epsilon have gone silent, the communications officer reported. Last transmission indicated they detected anomalous energy signatures near Tarsus IV's outer asteroid belt. Show me their final sensor readings, Vess demanded. The tactical display shifted to show the patrol ship's last transmitted data. What Vess saw defied explanation. The vessels had detected small objects approaching, barely larger than single-occupant fighter craft. But before defensive systems could target them, both Ceres ships experienced catastrophic systems failures. Forward the data to engineering, Vess ordered. I want to know how these humans are disabling our technology. An emergency signal interrupted his thoughts. Sir, we're receiving distress calls from multiple security stations throughout the ship. The main screen split into sections showing security footage from various decks. Vess watched in disbelief as small, insect-like devices moved through ventilation systems and maintenance ducts. Wherever they appeared, Ceres soldiers collapsed seemingly without injury, while equipment failed systematically. Biological weapons? Vess demanded. The science officer shook his head. Readings suggest they're synthetic, some kind of advanced microdrones. But they're organic-looking enough to fool our bioscanners. How did they get aboard? Vess roared. Unknown, Captain. They may have attached to the hull during our hyperspace transit. Our shields were down during that period. Vess slammed a fist against his command chair. Initiate emergency lockdown protocol. Seal all critical sections and deploy countermeasure teams with EMP weapons. But reports streamed in from throughout the massive vessel. The intruders seemed unaffected by electromagnetic pulses, continuing their advance toward vital systems. Ceres soldiers in full combat armor fired plasma weapons at the tiny devices with minimal effect. Captain, Lieutenant Malder's voice had dropped to a near whisper. I've completed analysis of that partial transmission we intercepted. It refers to something called ANTs, Autonomous Neutralization Tacticals. They're designed specifically to counter Ceres defense systems. Vess stared at him. How could they have developed countermeasures so precisely tailored to our technology? We've never engaged with humans before. That's just it, sir. Maldar looked truly disturbed now. The transmission contained references to detailed Ceres technical specifications. Somehow, they knew exactly what they would be facing. A cold realization settled over Vess. They've been studying us, perhaps for years. Captain, the tactical officer's voice cracked with strain. Multiple ship systems are failing. Life support compromised on Deck 7 through 12. Weapons systems offline. Shields operating at 40% capacity and falling. Vess made a decision. Initiate the dampening field. The order sent a shock through the bridge crew. The dampening field was the Ceres Ace, technology designed to neutralize all advanced systems within its radius, rendering enemy vessels inoperable, while Ceres ships, specially shielded against its effects, maintained functionality. It was enormously energy-intensive and rarely deployed except in desperate circumstances. Dampening field active, reported the weapons officer after a moment. Vess allowed himself a moment of hope, until the reports continued streaming in. No effect on the intruder devices, sir. They appear to be continuing operations normally. Impossible, Vess breathed. The field disrupts all computational systems. Sir, the science officer looked up from his readings, face pale. These aren't conventional computational systems. They appear to be wholly biological in nature. Living computers, essentially. A new alert sounded, different from the others, more urgent. Captain, we're being boarded. Security feeds showed small craft attaching themselves to various points along the Iron Will's hull, burning through with precision tools that sliced through Ceres alloys like they were fabric. And then Vess saw them, the humans themselves. They moved with disturbing efficiency in what appeared to be minimalist environmental suits rather than proper combat armor. Their weapons were small, precise, and devastatingly effective against Ceres soldiers whose armor should have rendered them nearly invulnerable. How are they penetrating our armor? Vess demanded. Their weapons aren't energy-based, reported the tactical officer, confusion evident. They appear to be projectile weapons, firing small metal slugs at extremely high velocities. Vess nearly laughed at the absurdity. The Ceres had abandoned projectile weapons centuries ago as primitive and inefficient compared to energy weapons. Yet somehow, these seemingly archaic weapons were dropping his soldiers with ruthless efficiency. Captain, the communications officer turned with dread evident in his posture. We're being hailed again. The main screen activated without Vess's authorization, revealing the same human female from before. But this time, she was not alone. Beside her stood a taller figure, male by apparent sexual dimorphism, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. Captain Vess, the new human spoke, voice carrying natural authority. I am Commander Jackson Slade, Earth Defense Force. Your ship is now under our control. All resistance will result in unnecessary casualties among your crew. Vess snarled, displaying impressive dentition. The Ceres Federation does not surrender. Whatever temporary advantage you've gained. This isn't about advantage, Captain, Slade interrupted, his calm demeanor somehow more threatening than any display of aggression. This is about reality. Right now, 78% of your ship's critical systems are under our control. Your weapons are offline. Your engines are locked down. The only reason your life support continues functioning is because we allow it. As if to demonstrate, the lights on the bridge flickered briefly. You've built your empire on subjugating those weaker than yourselves, Slade continued. You've never faced a species that evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day of their existence. You've never encountered beings whose entire evolutionary history is a testament to survival against impossible odds. For the first time in his career, Vess found himself genuinely uncertain. His entire tactical doctrine was built around overwhelming force against inferior opponents. Nothing in his training had prepared him for an enemy that had apparently neutralized every Ceres advantage before the battle even began. What do you want? Vess finally asked, the question feeling alien on his tongue. Your complete withdrawal from Tarsus and all council-protected systems, Slade answered immediately. And your formal acknowledgement that further incursions will be met with similar responses. Vess's mind raced through options. The self-destruct sequence would prevent capture of Ceres technology, but as he reached for the concealed command panel, he found it unresponsive. "We've disabled that too," Slade noted, as if reading his thoughts. "As I said, Captain, we control your ship now." Around the bridge, Vess could see his officers exchanging glances, their confidence visibly crumbling. The unthinkable was happening. The legendary veteran killers were being systematically dismantled by creatures they had dismissed as soft and weak. "You have two options," Slade continued. "Agree to our terms, or we withdraw our people and leave you adrift in a ship we've thoroughly disabled. Your choice." Pride warred with practicality in Vess's mind. Ceres doctrine demanded fighting to the last breath. But as reports of casualties continued flowing in, his troops falling not to superior numbers but to devastating efficiency, he recognized the mathematical certainty of defeat. "I require communication with Ceres High Command," Vess managed, each word like acid in his mouth. "Granted," Slade nodded. "You have 1 hour." When the screen went dark, Vess turned to face his bridge crew. Their expressions mirrored his own internal struggle. Disbelief, anger, and a dawning realization that they had encountered something beyond their experience. "Prepare a secured channel to High Command," he ordered, his voice unnaturally quiet. "And compile all data on human capabilities. They need to understand what we're facing." As his officers hurried to comply, Vess stared at the blank screen where the humans had been. In all his years of military service, he had never encountered a species that had so thoroughly anticipated and countered Ceres tactics. For the first time, he was facing an opponent that didn't fear the veteran killers. And that realization terrified him more than he cared to admit. The great hall of the Ceres High Command fell silent as Captain Cargo Vess concluded his report. Massive view screens displayed the data recovered from the Iron Will's encounter with the humans, footage of Ceres. Elite soldiers falling to seemingly primitive weapons, security systems bypassed by organic computers, and a systematic dismantling of what had been considered impenetrable defenses. Supreme Commander Raxus, whose campaigns had doubled the size of the Ceres Federation during his tenure, leaned forward on his massive, ceremonial throne. "You expect us to believe that soft-skinned creatures with no natural armor defeated our most advanced warship?" Vess stood rigid before the council, his pride in tatters but his resolve intact. "I report only what occurred, Supreme Commander. The humans employed technologies and tactics we had no defense against. They anticipated our strategies with disturbing accuracy." "Impossible," growled General Thorax, head of military intelligence. "No species could develop such precise countermeasures without extensive prior contact. And yet they did," Vess countered. "The evidence is irrefutable. They knew our shield frequencies, our security protocols, even the specifications of our dampening technology." Murmurs spread through the assembled military leadership. The implications were disturbing. Either there had been a catastrophic intelligence breach, or these humans possessed analytical capabilities far beyond Ceres expectations. "Tell us about these Deathworlders," Raxus commanded, using the term with evident skepticism. Vess activated his data tablet, projecting images of Earth onto the main display. "Their homeworld defies conventional habitability metrics. Gravity 1.3 times our standard. Atmospheric composition includes multiple elements toxic to most sentient species. Temperature variations that would kill most council races. Predators evolved specifically to hunt intelligent prey. Natural disasters including massive storms, tectonic instability, and regular extinction-level events." He paused, allowing the images to cycle through. Hurricanes tearing across continents, volcanoes ejecting ash clouds visible from space, predators displaying hunting strategies of disturbing sophistication. In this environment, Vess continued, humans evolved not through natural superiority, but through adaptation and innovation. They lack our physical strength, our natural armor, our biological weapons, so they created artificial versions that exceed the capabilities of any we've encountered. And you surrendered to these creatures? Thorax's voice dripped with disgust. Vess met his gaze without flinching. I made a strategic withdrawal to preserve essential intelligence. Had I not, the iron would have been lost with all hands, and you would have no warning of the threat we now face. Before Thorax could respond, a communication alert sounded. The central screen shifted to display a formal message bearing the seal of the Interstellar Council, but with an additional emblem that Vess now recognized as belonging to the Earth Defense Force. This arrived minutes ago, explained Admiral Zeros, head of diplomatic affairs. It's an official notice from the Council, with human representatives as signatories. The message was direct. The Ceres Federation must cease all military operations against Council-protected worlds. Any further aggression would be met with appropriate defensive measures. Accompanying the message was detailed footage from the Iron Will engagement, clearly intended to demonstrate human capabilities without ambiguity. They're threatening us, Thorax snarled. The Ceres do not bow to threats. Perhaps, Admiral Zeros replied carefully, we should consider this a diplomatic opportunity rather than a threat. The message includes an invitation to open formal relations with both the Council and Earth specifically. Diplomacy is the recourse of the weak, Thorax dismissed. With respect, General, Vess interjected, I have faced these humans directly. There is nothing weak about their approach. They disabled a Ceres battlecruiser with minimal casualties on either side. That suggests not weakness, but strategic restraint. Raxus studied Vess with narrowed eyes. You sound almost admiring, Captain. I admire efficiency and tactical superiority, Supreme Commander. The humans displayed both. Vess straightened his posture. Had they wished to destroy the Iron Will, I believe they could have done so. Instead, they chose to demonstrate their capabilities while minimizing loss of life. Silence fell over the hall as the implications sank in. For centuries, the Ceres had expanded based on a simple principle. Their military superiority was absolute. Species that resisted were crushed. Those that submitted were absorbed. But if a species existed that could neutralize Ceres' military advantage, we should launch an immediate counteroffensive, General Thorax declared. Before these humans can consolidate their position, the full might of the Ceres fleet would accomplish what, exactly? Admiral Zeros interrupted. If their technology could disable our most advanced warship, what makes you think a larger fleet would fare better? We developed countermeasures, Thorax insisted. This Project Severance I've been hearing about, methods to disrupt their biological computing systems. Development takes time, Zeros countered. Time during which we would be vulnerable to further human incursions. Supreme Commander Raxus raised a hand, silencing the debate. Captain Vess, you faced these creatures directly. In your assessment, what course should we pursue? Vess felt the weight of the question. His answer would shape Ceres' policy moving forward, possibly determine the very future of their empire. He chose his words with care. Supreme Commander, the Ceres Federation has prospered by conquering the weak and intimidating the strong. We have never faced a species that evolved on a death world. A species for whom survival against impossible odds is not merely a military doctrine, but the foundation of their very existence. He gestured toward the images of Earth still cycling on secondary displays. Humans don't just know how to fight. They know how to adapt, to innovate, to identify weaknesses and exploit them with ruthless efficiency. They entered this conflict knowing more about us than we knew about ourselves. Vess paused, aware that his next words might end his career, or worse. I believe we have two viable options. First, we can radically transform our military approach, developing entirely new technologies and tactics that the humans haven't yet studied. This would require unprecedented resources and time, during which our expansion would necessarily halt. Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the assembly, but Vess continued undeterred. Our second option is to accept the diplomatic overture. Establish formal relations with both the Council and Earth. Secure our existing territory rather than risking it all in a conflict against an adversary whose full capabilities remain unknown. General Thorax slammed a fist against the table before him. Cowardice. Viserys, do not retreat. It is not cowardice to recognize when one faces a superior opponent, Ves countered. It is wisdom. Supreme Commander Raxus leaned back, his expression unreadable. You've given us much to consider, Captain. For now, we will analyze the data from your encounter and deliberate on our response. You are dismissed. As Ves turned to leave the Great Hall, he caught fragments of heated discussions already erupting among the military leadership. Some demanded immediate retaliation, others cautioned restraint. The Cerys Empire stood at a crossroads. Continue their aggressive expansion and risk confrontation with an opponent they didn't fully understand, or adapt to a new reality where they were not, perhaps, the apex predators they had believed themselves to be. The door sealed behind him, cutting off the arguments. In the relative quiet of the antechamber, Ves found himself standing before a massive viewing port that overlooked the Cerys homeworld. The brilliant orange sun was setting behind distant mountains, casting long shadows across the landscape. Quite a view, isn't it? Ves turned to find Admiral Zeros approaching. Admiral, I thought you'd remain for the deliberations. Sometimes one needs perspective, Zeros replied, moving to stand beside Ves at the viewport. Something I believe you've gained through your encounter with the humans. I've gained uncertainty, Ves admitted. Everything I believed about our place in the galaxy has been challenged. Zeros nodded slowly. You know they won't listen, don't you? Thorax and his supporters. They'll push for military response, regardless of your warning. And Raxus, the Supreme Commander, is pragmatic above all else. But even pragmatism can be clouded by centuries of unchallenged expansion. Zeros gazed out at the darkening landscape. Tell me something not in your official report, Captain. Something about these humans that truly concerns you. Ves considered the question carefully. Their confidence, he finally answered. Not arrogance, confidence. They knew exactly what they were capable of and exactly what we would do in response. It was like facing an opponent who had already played the game 1,000 times. Disturbing, Zeros murmured. More disturbing was what their commander said to me, Ves continued. He said humans evolve on a world that tried to kill them every day of their existence. That their entire evolutionary history is a testament to survival against impossible odds. Ves turned to face the Admiral directly. We conquer the weak, Admiral. But these humans, they weren't forged in conquest. They were forged in survival. Zeros' expression darkened. A different kind of strength entirely. Precisely. Ves looked back to the viewport, where the first stars were becoming visible in the darkening sky. Somewhere out, there's a species that looks upon our natural armor, our superior strength, our biological weapons, all the things that have made us the dominant force in this sector, and sees nothing but challenges to overcome, problems to solve. And you believe they can solve them? I believe they already have, Ves replied quietly. That's why I recommended diplomacy. Not from fear, but from recognition. We've spent centuries asking ourselves, who can stop us? For the first time, I believe we have an answer. Admiral Zeros was silent for a long moment. I'll support your recommendation in the continued deliberations. But prepare yourself, Captain. I suspect we have not seen the last of these humans. No, Ves agreed, his gaze fixed on the distant stars where, perhaps, human vessels were already moving through the darkness. I suspect we have only seen the beginning. 3 standard months after the encounter between the Iron Will and the humans, Captain Cargo Ves found himself reassigned to a research station orbiting a remote moon in Cerys space. His official designation was strategic consultant, but he knew the truth. He had been sidelined, his warnings about human capabilities dismissed by a military leadership unwilling to accept the new reality. The research station, officially designated Research Outpost Sigma 9, unofficially known as Exile's Watch, housed scientists and engineers working on Project Severance, the Cerys attempt to develop countermeasures against human technology. Ves had been brought in to provide first-hand accounts of human capabilities, but his input was increasingly ignored as the project progressed along lines dictated by political necessity rather than tactical reality. "They're focusing on the wrong thing," Vess muttered, reviewing the latest research update on his data tablet. "Trying to develop anti-human weapons without understanding human thinking." His office, a small, utilitarian space with a single viewport overlooking the barren lunar surface, had become both sanctuary and prison. Here, surrounded by reports and analyses that consistently missed the point, Vess struggled to make his superiors understand what they were truly facing. The door chime interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called, not looking up from his tablet. Dr. Myra Thassis, lead xenobiologist for Project Severance, stepped into the office. Her scaled features were set in the perpetual expression of scientific curiosity that Vess had come to recognize over the past months of collaboration. "Captain, I've been reviewing your encounter logs again," she began without preamble. "Particularly the biological data we collected on the human boarding parties." "And," Vess prompted, setting aside his tablet, "their physical capabilities don't make sense." Thassis activated the room's holographic projector, displaying comparative anatomical diagrams of Ceres and human physiology. "By every metric we measure, they should be inferior combatants. Lower muscle density, no natural armor, limited visual spectrum, heightened pain sensitivity. And yet they disabled my ship and neutralized my troops with minimal effort," Vess finished for her. "Exactly," Thassis exclaimed, her scientific enthusiasm momentarily overriding military decorum. "I've been authorized to share something with you. Classified research from before your encounter." The holographic display shifted to show various planets, each labeled with environmental data. "We've been studying death worlds for decades, trying to understand what types of evolutionary pressures produce viable sentient species. Earth defies all our models." Vess leaned forward, suddenly interested. "How so?" "Most extreme environments produce specialized adaptations, biological solutions to specific threats." Thassis manipulated the display to show various alien species, each highlighting specialized biological weapons or defenses. "But humans, they're generalists to an extreme we've never documented. Their adaptability isn't physical, it's behavioral and cognitive. Meaning they don't evolve biological solutions to problems, they invent technological ones." The display shifted again, showing the progression of human technology across an impossibly compressed timescale. "Most species take thousands of generations to transition from basic tools to spaceflight. Humans did it in less than 100. Vess studied the display with growing concern. "You're suggesting their evolutionary advantage is their rate of adaptation itself." "Precisely." Thassis looked genuinely troubled. "And Project Severance is attempting to develop countermeasures against their current technology, not understanding that by the time we deploy such measures, they'll have already moved beyond them." Before Vess could respond, his communication terminal chimed with a priority alert. "Captain Vess, report to Command Center immediately. Security level Alpha." Exchanging a glance with Thassis, Vess rose from his desk. "Continue your research, Doctor. I suspect we may need it sooner than anticipated." The Command Center of Research Outpost Sigma 9 was a hive of controlled panic when Vess arrived. Officers rushed between monitoring stations while the station commander, Admiral Krell, stood staring at the main tactical display with undisguised apprehension. "Captain Vess," Krell acknowledged without turning, "I believe we're about to test your theories about human capabilities." Vess approached the display, which showed a region of space near the Ceres Council border. A single vessel was highlighted, approaching Ceres territory at sublight speed. "Human?" Vess asked. "Confirmed," Krell nodded grimly. "Vessel designation Horizon's Edge. Council Diplomatic Registry. But our intelligence suggests it carries Earth Defense Force personnel. Have they made any aggressive moves?" "No. They're broadcasting on open channels. A request for direct communication with Ceres High Command regarding, and I quote, matters of mutual concern." Vess studied the tactical data. Their approach vector would bring them past Outpost Sigma 9. "Yes," Krell confirmed. High Command believes this is no coincidence. They suspect the humans have identified Project Severance and intend to neutralize it. If they've identified this facility, they've had ample opportunity to attack it, Vess pointed out. Why announce their presence and request communication? Krell finally turned to face him. Perhaps you tell me, Captain. You seem to understand these creatures better than our intelligence division. Vess considered the question carefully. The humans I encountered valued efficiency above all else. If they wanted to destroy this facility, we would already be under attack. I believe their request for communication is genuine. High Command disagrees, Krell replied flatly. They've ordered us to intercept and neutralize the human vessel before it can approach Sigmine. Vess felt a chill of foreboding. With what assets? The destroyer Vanguard is on station, along with 3 support vessels. Krell gestured to their positions on the display. They're moving to intercept now. Admiral, Vess chose his words carefully. Based on my experience with human capabilities, this force is insufficient if they intend to resist. The Vanguard carries prototype Severance technology, Krell countered, specifically designed to counter the methods they used against your ship, which assumes their tactics and technology remain static, Vess argued. Dr. Thassus's research suggests this is a dangerous assumption. Krell's expression hardened. The orders come directly from Supreme Commander Axis. The human vessel will be intercepted and neutralized. We are to observe and record the engagement for analysis. Understanding the futility of further argument, Vess took position at a monitoring station. The tactical display showed the Vanguard and its escorts approaching the human vessel, which maintained its course without deviation. They're within weapons range, reported a tactical officer. The Vanguard is hailing the human ship. The communication was brief, a standard Ceres demand for surrender, met with a human request for explanation. The Vanguard's commander cut the communication and ordered weapons lock. This is a mistake, Vess murmured, too quietly for anyone but himself to hear. What happened next occurred with such speed that the monitoring systems struggled to capture the sequence of events. The human vessel, previously registering as unarmed in Ceres scans, suddenly erupted with activity. Not conventional weapons fire, but what appear to be thousands of small objects deploying in a spherical pattern around the ship. Micro-drones, Vess recognized immediately, similar to what they used against the Iron Will. But these were clearly an advanced iteration, where the previous drones had required physical contact with Ceres vessels. These projected some form of energy field that enveloped the approaching Ceres ships. Within seconds, the Vanguard and 2 of its escorts reported complete systems failure. The 3rd escort attempted evasive maneuvers, but was quickly overtaken by the expanding field. Status report, Krell demanded. All 4 vessels have gone silent, Admiral, reported a pale-faced communications officer. Life support appears operational, but all weapons, propulsion, and communication systems are offline. The Severance prototypes? No data, sir. They appear to have been neutralized before deployment. The command center fell silent as the implications became clear. The humans had not only anticipated the Ceres interception, but had developed countermeasures for technology they couldn't possibly have directly encountered before. We're being hailed, announced the communications officer. The human vessel is requesting direct communication with this facility. All eyes turned to Admiral Krell, whose rigid posture betrayed his internal conflict. Military doctrine demanded resistance, but the evidence before him suggested the futility of such a course. Put them through, he finally ordered. The main screen activated to show a human male in what appeared to be a formal diplomatic uniform rather than military attire. This is Ambassador Thomas Reeves of the Earth Diplomatic Corps aboard the Horizon's Edge. I request communication with the commanding officer of Research Outpost Sigma 9. Krell stepped forward. This is Admiral Krell. Your vessel has committed an act of war against the Ceres Federation by disabling our ships. Explain yourself. The human's expression remained calm. Admiral, your vessel's locked weapons on a diplomatic ship in clear violation of Interstellar Council protocols. We employed defensive measures that caused no casualties and no permanent damage. Your ships will regain functionality once we've concluded our business. What business could possibly justify this incursion into Ceres space? The prevention of unnecessary conflict, Reeves replied simply. Our intelligence indicates your facility is developing weapons specifically designed to target human technology. This represents a clear escalation that contradicts recent diplomatic assurances from your government. Krell's eyes narrowed. Your intelligence is mistaken. This is a scientific research station. Admiral, the human's tone grew firmer. Let's not waste time with denials. We know the nature and purpose of Project Severance. We know which scientists are involved, which technologies you're attempting to develop, and even the project's current progress status. From his monitoring station, Vess watched Krell's posture shift almost imperceptibly, the subtle tell of a Ceres military officer recognizing a superior tactical position. What do you want, Ambassador? Krell finally asked. I wish to meet with your research team, in person, to discuss alternatives to our current trajectory toward conflict. Krell glanced toward Vess, a silent question in his eyes. Vess gave a small nod. The human proposal aligned with his own assessment of their motives. Very well, Krell agreed reluctantly. You may send a shuttle to Docking Bay 3. You, and no more than 3 representatives may board. You will be escorted by security personnel at all times. Acceptable, Reeves nodded. Please ensure Captain Cargo Vess is present for our discussion. His insights would be valuable. Before Krell could respond, the communication ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. How do they know you were here? Krell demanded, turning to Vess. The same way they knew about Project Severance, Vess replied calmly. Their intelligence capabilities exceed our security measures. The question we should be asking is why they're extending this diplomatic overture instead of simply neutralizing this facility as they clearly could. Krell's expression darkened. You almost sound as if you admire them. I respect demonstrated capability, Vess corrected, and I recognize when continued resistance is tactically unsound. For hours later, Vess found himself in Sigma-9's main conference room alongside Admiral Krell, Dr. Thassis, and the station's chief of security. They watched in silence as the human delegation was escorted in. Ambassador Reeves accompanied by a woman introduced as Dr. Sofia Rodriguez, a specialist in xenobiology, and Commander Jackson Slade, the same Earth Defense Force officer who had overseen the capture of Vess's ship months earlier. Captain Vess, Slade acknowledged with a nod that contained neither hostility nor triumph. Good to see you again under more amicable circumstances. Commander, Vess returned evenly. I notice your tactics have evolved since our last encounter. A hint of a smile crossed Slade's face. As have your defensive measures, I'm sure. Evolution is constant. Admiral Krell interrupted the exchange. State your purpose here, Ambassador. Directly, Reeves placed a small device on the conference table. With your permission, I'll display some information relevant to our discussion. At Krell's nod, the device activated, projecting a holographic display of the galactic region containing both Ceres and human-influenced territories. The Ceres Federation has built an impressive empire. Reeves began, his tone measured and professorial. Your expansion through this sector has been methodical and largely unchallenged. Until recently, the display shifted to show detailed statistics on recent Ceres military operations. Information that should have been highly classified. Since our encounter with Captain Vess's vessel, the Ceres military has accelerated weapons development, reinforced border positions, and increased intelligence operations against Earth and Council worlds. Reeves gestured to the data. Simultaneously, you've maintained public diplomatic overtures while privately pursuing aggressive countermeasures. You speak as if defense of our territory is somehow illegitimate, Krell replied coldly. Not at all, Reeves countered. Defense is perfectly legitimate. The question is whether your actions are truly defensive or preparatory for renewed aggression. Dr. Rodriguez spoke for the first time, her attention directed toward Dr. Thassis. Your work on Severance is quite ingenious, Doctor. Attempting to develop synthetic parasites that would target the biological components of our technology shows remarkable insight into our integrated systems approach. Thasus appeared startled by this direct reference to her classified research. How could you possibly know the specifics of? The same way we know that your latest simulations show a 43% likelihood of success under ideal conditions, Rodriguez interrupted gently. Which is precisely what concerns us. Commander Slade leaned forward. Let me be direct. Project Severance represents a dangerous misconception about the nature of human technological development. You're attempting to develop countermeasures against systems we've already begun to phase out. The statement hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone present. Why are you telling us this? Vess asked, genuinely curious. From a strategic perspective, allowing us to pursue ineffective countermeasures would seem advantageous to you. Because we didn't come here to establish strategic advantage, Ambassador Reeves answered. We came to prevent unnecessary conflict. The holographic display changed again, showing a complex network of interconnected worlds, the Interstellar Council's trade and defensive alliances. Humanity has no territorial ambitions in Ceres space, Reeves continued. Our only interest is in protecting Council worlds that have requested our assistance. The current trajectory, your military buildup, our technological countermeasures, the inevitable testing of respective capabilities, leads to conflict that benefits neither of us. Admiral Krell's expression remained skeptical. And your proposed alternative? Genuine diplomatic engagement, Reeves replied without hesitation. Not performative discussions while military preparations continue, but substantive negotiations on non-aggression pacts, recognized boundaries, and potential areas of cooperation. Cooperation? Krell almost laughed. Between Ceres and humans? Is it so inconceivable? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Our species evolved under different pressures, developed different strengths. There's potential complementarity there, not just conflict. Vess found himself considering the possibility with unexpected seriousness. Throughout his military career, he had viewed alien species through a single lens, potential targets for conquest or subjugation. The concept of genuine cooperation with a species that had demonstrated superior capabilities represented a paradigm shift in Ceres thinking. And if we refuse this genuine diplomatic engagement, Krell challenged. Commander Slade's expression hardened slightly. Then we continue along the current path. You develop weapons that lag behind our evolving technology. We deploy countermeasures that negate your advances. Resources that could benefit both our civilizations are wasted on an arms race neither side truly wants. And what guarantees do we have that this isn't simply a delaying tactic while you further consolidate your position? Krell demanded. The same guarantees you offer us, Reeves replied evenly. Trust must begin somewhere, Admiral. An uncomfortable silence fell over the conference room. The Ceres representatives exchanged glances, the weight of the decision before them evident in their expressions. Finally, Vess spoke. I believe their proposal merits serious consideration. The evidence of their technological superiority is before us. Continuing our current course guarantees conflict under unfavorable conditions. Krell turned to him, anger flashing briefly in his eyes before control reasserted itself. Your recommendation is noted, Captain. However, such decisions are beyond the authority of this facility. I must consult with High Command. Of course, Ambassador Reeves agreed readily. We anticipated as much. We will remain in orbit until you've received your instructions. After the human delegation had been escorted back to their shuttle, Admiral Krell ordered the conference room sealed and swept for surveillance devices. When security confirmed they were secure, he turned to Vess with barely contained fury. You supported their proposal in front of the enemy. I stated a tactical assessment based on available evidence, Vess replied calmly. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that exceed our defenses. Twice now. And you believe their diplomatic overtures are genuine? Vess considered carefully. I believe they're pragmatic. They've shown they can neutralize our military advantage whenever they choose. Yet they seek dialogue instead of pressing that advantage. This suggests they genuinely prefer resolution without conflict. Dr. Thasus, who had remained silent throughout most of the exchange with the humans, finally spoke. They knew details of my research that exist only in my private notes. Not even the project database contains some of those specifics. Krell's expression darkened further, suggesting what? That they've infiltrated our most secure facility, or that their intelligence capabilities simply exceed our security measures by orders of magnitude, Vess suggested. Either way, the tactical reality remains unchanged. Later that night, alone in his quarters, Vess found himself unable to sleep. The day's events had stirred questions that had been forming in his mind since his first encounter with the humans months ago. Questions not just about tactics and strategy, but about the foundational principles that had guided the Ceres Federation's expansion for centuries. His door chime sounded, an unexpected interruption at such a late hour. Enter, he called, curious. Dr. Thassis stepped inside, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Captain, I apologize for the intrusion, but there's something I need to discuss privately. Go ahead. Vess gestured for her to take a seat. After today's meeting, I reviewed all my research data on human evolutionary patterns, she began. Something the human scientist, Dr. Rodriguez, said kept bothering me. About our misconception regarding their technological development. And she was right. Thassis activated a small data tablet, displaying comparative analyses. We've been approaching human technology as if it follows the same patterns as Ceres development. Linear advancement along established pathways. But their historical pattern is fundamentally different. The display showed branching pathways of technological development, with multiple parallel paths advancing simultaneously, occasionally intersecting in unexpected ways. They don't just improve existing technologies, Thassis explained. They regularly abandon entire technological paradigms when more efficient approaches emerge. The biological computing systems they used against the Iron Will, already obsolete by their standards. The micro-drones that disable the Vanguard today, likely transitional technology. Vess studied the display with growing concern, suggesting Project Severance is even more futile than the humans implied. More than that, Thassis looked genuinely troubled. It suggests our entire approach to interspecies relations may be fundamentally flawed. Explain. The Ceres expanded through this sector because we encountered species that followed predictable patterns. Evolutionary, technological, societal. We could anticipate their responses, counter their defenses, exploit their weaknesses. She gestured to the human developmental patterns on display. But what if humans represent something we've never encountered before? A species whose adaptive rate exceeds our ability to predict. Vess felt a profound unease at the implications, suggesting the continued conflict with humans would be like fighting an opponent who evolves new capabilities between each exchange. Thassis finished for him. Not a path to victory, regardless of initial strength. The revelation hung between them, its implications extending far beyond tactical considerations to the very foundations of Ceres' identity. For centuries, the Ceres had defined themselves as conquerors, their biological and technological superiority justifying their expansion. If humans truly represented an equal or superior force in the galaxy, what did that mean for the Ceres' understanding of their place in the cosmic order? Before Vess could respond, an alert sounded throughout the station, the distinctive pattern indicating priority communication from High Command. Sharing a glance with Thassis, Vess hurried to the command center, where Admiral Krell was already receiving transmission. Understood, Supreme Commander, Krell was saying as Vess entered. We will comply immediately. The transmission ended, and Krell turned to face the assembled officers, his expression unreadable. High Command has reached a decision regarding the human diplomatic overture. All eyes fixed on the Admiral as he continued. After consideration of all intelligence, including reports from Captain Vess and analysis of today's encounter, Supreme Commander Raxus has determined that direct conflict with human forces at this time would not serve Ceres' interests. Murmurs spread through the command center, surprise from some, relief from others. Diplomatic channels will be established, Krell continued. Project Severance is to be suspended pending review. The announcement sent a shock through the assembled officers. Never in recorded Ceres history had a military research project been suspended due to diplomatic considerations. Admiral, a security officer approached urgently. The human shuttle is requesting permission to dock. Ambassador Reeves wishes to speak with you immediately. Krell frowned. They couldn't possibly know High Command's decision already. Unless they intercepted the transmission, Vess suggested, or predicted the outcome before it occurred. The Admiral's frown deepened. Grant them docking clearance. Captain Vess, Dr. Thassis, you will accompany me to meet them. When the human delegation emerged from their shuttle, Vess immediately noticed a shift in their demeanor. Where Ambassador Reeves had been formal and measured earlier, he now appeared genuinely concerned. Admiral Krell, he began without preamble, we've detected unusual activity in the Persei sector. Specifically, movement of Ceres military vessels not consistent with your standard patrol patterns. Krell's expression revealed nothing. Our deployments within our territory are not subject to council oversight, Ambassador. Ordinarily, I would agree, Reeves nodded. However, this deployment coincides with unusual communications suggesting possible unauthorized action by elements within your military. Explain, Krell demanded. Commander Slade stepped forward. Our analysis suggests a faction within your military leadership may be attempting to force conflict regardless of High Command's diplomatic decisions. Specifically, we've identified communications indicating a planned strike against Council outposts using prototype weapons developed here at Sigma-9. The accusation hung in the air, its implications clear, treachery within the Ceres military hierarchy. These are serious allegations, Krell replied carefully. What evidence supports them? Ambassador Reeves produced a data device. This contains intercepted communications between General Thorax and commanders of the battle group, currently moving toward Persei. Their intent appears to be testing Project Severance weapons against Council installations to provoke human response. Vess felt a cold certainty settle over him. Thorax had been the most vocal opponent of diplomatic engagement with humans during the High Command deliberations. If he believed Raxus's decision jeopardized Ceres supremacy, he might indeed take drastic action. Admiral Krell reviewed the information with growing concern evident in his posture. If accurate, this represents a direct violation of chain of command. However, I lack the authority to recall vessels under Thorax's direct command. We understand, Reeves nodded. We're not asking you to intervene directly. We're informing you of this situation as a demonstration of good faith at the outset of our diplomatic engagement. And what action do you intend to take? Krell asked cautiously. We've already dispatched vessels to intercept the Ceres battle group, Commander Slade answered. Not to attack, but to establish a defensive perimeter around the threatened installations. We're also transmitting this evidence directly to Supreme Commander Raxus. Dr. Thassis spoke up unexpectedly. The prototypes aren't ready. If deployed, there's likely to damage Ceres vessels as any target. Commander Slade's expression confirmed her assessment. We know, which is why we're acting to prevent not just aggression against Council worlds, but potential disaster for the Ceres forces involved. Vess watched the exchange with a growing sense that he was witnessing a pivotal moment in Ceres history. The humans had detected a threat not just to themselves, but to Ceres stability. And rather than exploit this internal division, they were working to prevent potential catastrophe on both sides. What can we do? Vess asked, the question directed not to Krell, but to the humans. Support the diplomatic channel that's been opened. Ambassador Reeves replied simply. When the immediate crisis is resolved, and it will be, work with us to establish a new paradigm of interaction between our civilizations. Admiral Krell seemed to reach a decision. I will speak directly with Supreme Commander Raxus. If General Thorax has indeed violated chain of command, he will be dealt with according to our protocols. Thank you, Admiral, Reeves nodded. This response affirms our belief that cooperation is possible between our peoples. As the humans departed to return to their vessel, Vess found himself standing once again before the observation viewport, gazing at the stars. Admiral Krell joined him after a moment, his usual rigid posture slightly softened by the weight of recent revelations. "You were right," Krell admitted quietly. "About the humans. About the futility of military confrontation. A difficult truth to accept," Vess acknowledged. "It challenges everything we believed about our place in the galaxy." "What happens now, I wonder?" Krell mused. "If we cannot expand through conquest as we have for centuries, what becomes of the Ceres Federation?" Vess considered the question. "Perhaps we evolve, find new definitions of strength, new paths to advancement, learn from humans." Krell's tone suggested the concept remained somewhat alien to him. "They adapted to survive on a world that tried to kill them at every turn," Vess replied. "Perhaps their greatest lesson is that adaptation itself, not any specific strength, is the true key to survival." The viewport before them framed the distant stars where human and Ceres vessels now moved in uncertain patterns, no longer purely adversarial, not yet truly cooperative. The future remained unwritten, but one thing had become clear to Cargo Vess. The days of unchallenged Ceres expansion were over. In their place, a new era was beginning, one defined not by conquest of the weak, but by engagement with equals. And perhaps, in that engagement, the Ceres might discover strength they never knew they possessed. 6 months later, Captain Cargo Vess stood before the newly established Joint Council chamber on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. Representatives from the Ceres Federation sat across from human diplomats, with various council species arranged around the circular chamber. The diplomatic summit that had begun as crisis management had evolved into something more substantial. The first genuine treaty negotiations between Ceres and humans. The attempted unauthorized action by General Thorax had been thwarted through the combined efforts of human interceptors and loyal Ceres commanders who, when presented with evidence of violated chains of command, had refused to engage. Thorax himself had been removed from command, his supporters identified and reassigned to positions without military authority. Supreme Commander Raxus, demonstrating the pragmatism that had made him a successful leader, had embraced the new diplomatic direction with unexpected vigor. Where initial expectations had been merely for non-aggression agreements, the scope had expanded to include potential technological exchange, joint scientific ventures, and even discussion of cooperative security arrangements against threats that might affect both civilizations. Vess, whose first-hand experience with humans had proven invaluable, had been appointed special liaison to the diplomatic mission. Dr. Thassis had joined him, her research now focused on comparative evolutionary studies rather than weapons development. "The Ceres delegation recognizes Captain Cargo Vess," announced the council moderator. Vess approached the central podium, aware of the historical significance of the moment. His prepared remarks covered the technical aspects of proposed security protocols, but as he looked out at the assembled representatives, Ceres, human, and the diverse species of the council, he felt compelled to speak more personally. "Before addressing the specific proposals before us, I wish to acknowledge the journey that brought us to this chamber," he began. 6 standard months ago, I commanded a Ceres battlecruiser tasked with demonstrating our military superiority against what we believe to be an inferior species. Today, I stand before you as living testimony to the dangers of assumption and the value of adaptation. He continued, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The Ceres Federation defined strength through conquest for centuries. We believed our natural advantages, physical power, biological weapons, technological superiority, entitled us to expand without limitation. When we encountered resistance, we crushed it. When we found weakness, we exploited it. Vess paused, noting the attentive silence that had fallen over the chamber. In humans, we encountered something unprecedented in our experience. A species whose evolutionary path created not specific strengths, but adaptive capacity beyond anything we had imagined possible. A species that looked upon our apparent advantages and saw not insurmountable obstacles, but engineering problems to solve. Among the human delegation, Commander Slade and Ambassador Reeves listened with thoughtful expressions. Dr. Rodriguez nodded slightly, recognition of shared understanding in her eyes. The initial shock of that encounter has given way to a profound realization. Vess continued. True strength lies not in specific advantages, but in the capacity to evolve, to adapt, to transform in response to new challenges. This is the lesson Earth taught its inhabitants through countless generations of environmental adversity, and it is the lesson humans now offer to the Ceres. He gestured to the treaty documents displayed before each delegation. These agreements represent not surrender or compromise, but evolution. The beginning of a new understanding of our place in this galaxy, not as conquerors, but as one among many civilizations with unique contributions to offer. Vess drew his remarks to a close. The Ceres have long called our elite forces veteran killers, a name meant to inspire fear. Perhaps now we might aspire to be remembered for something greater than our capacity for conquest. Perhaps our true legacy might be how we learn to build rather than destroy, to cooperate rather than subjugate, to evolve beyond the limitations of our past. As he returned to his seat, the chamber erupted in the diverse sounds of multiple species signaling approval. Among his own delegation, reactions ranged from thoughtful consideration to lingering skepticism. The transition from conquest to cooperation would not be completed in a single diplomatic summit. Later, during a recess in the proceedings, Vess found himself standing in the summit venue's observation dome, gazing out at the unfamiliar stars of this neutral system. Commander Slade approached, taking position beside him in a moment of quiet reflection. "Impressive address," Slade commented, "particularly coming from a Ceres military officer." "Former military," Vess corrected. "My new role appears to be diplomat." "An unexpected evolution," Slade observed with a hint of smile. "Indeed." Vess turned slightly to regard the human commander. "Tell me honestly, did you know from our first encounter how events would unfold? Was this outcome part of your strategic calculation?" Slade considered the question carefully. "We knew conflict would be mutually destructive. We hoped cooperation might be possible. Beyond that," he shrugged. "Humans may be adaptable, Captain, but we're not prophets. And yet you seemed prepared for every contingency." "Preparation is what allowed our species to survive on Earth," Slade replied simply. "We learned long ago to anticipate multiple possibilities and plan accordingly." They stood in companionable silence for a moment. Two former adversaries united by shared experience, if not yet shared perspective. "There's a question I've been meaning to ask you," Vess said finally. "During our first encounter, when you had control of my ship, you could have destroyed it completely. Why show restraint?" Slade's expression grew thoughtful. "Because the true measure of advancement isn't what you can destroy, but what you choose to preserve. Humanity learned that lesson through near-extinction events in our own history." The profound simplicity of the statement resonated with Vess in unexpected ways. Throughout his military career, advancement had been measured in conquered worlds, subjugated species, demonstrations of superior force. The concept that true advancement might involve restraint rather than dominance represented yet another paradigm shift in his understanding. "Your perspective challenges everything the Ceres have believed about our place in the cosmos," Vess admitted. "Good," Slade replied without hesitation. "Challenge leads to growth." Another lesson from our death world. As they returned to the negotiation chamber, Vess found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. From confident commander of veteran killers to humbled witness of superior capability, to reluctant advocate for diplomatic engagement, to genuine believer in a new paradigm of interspecies relations. Each step had required abandoning certainties and embracing uncomfortable truths. The final agreements would be signed later that day, establishing boundaries, protocols, and pathways for ongoing cooperation between civilizations that months earlier had stood on the brink of conflict. Not all Ceres would embrace this new direction immediately, just as not all humans fully trusted their former adversaries. But the foundation had been laid for something unprecedented in Ceres history: advancement through cooperation rather than conquest. For Captain Cargo Vess, once among the most feared of the veteran killers, the irony was not lost. He had begun his journey seeking to demonstrate why others ran when Cerus arrived. He had ended at understanding why even veteran killers ran when Deathworlders appeared. And in that understanding had come not defeat, but transformation, perhaps the greatest victory of all.